Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, President Trump is on an exuberant tour of the Persian Gulf. He's in Saudi Arabia. Is right now. He's finished his the part of the journey that was in Saudi Arabia. Is now in Qatar, and then he's be heading towards the United Arab Emirates. And his meeting with Mohammed bin Salman was, of course, very ostentatious. MBS met him at the airport, something he didn't do for Joe Biden, because he, of course, remembered, Biden he talked about Khashoggi and so on. Trump, however, kind of shrugged his shoulders over the Khashoggi thing, and I think that obviously endeared him to MBS. And then lately, after all the festivities, there was a huge American delegation. It just, I mean, it's not just the Treasury Secretary, the Secretary of State. He also had his White House staff, his White House Chief of Staff was there, and so there's just about every person in the administration was there, and of course you had all the business leaders because that's what Trump wanted to do. Hey, get lots and lots of investment commitments from the Saudis, and they make a lot of commitments. I mean, whether these
Yeah,
plans
yeah.
realized
Memorandums of understanding and all that. I mean,
exactly.
Saudi Arabia, I really just kind of personally want to know, you really want to buy all those Boeing airplanes? I'm just asking.
They lavish an awful lot of money on the United States. They buy up all these weapon systems that they don't need. Saudi Arabia doesn't fight any wars against anyone, and even if they
Do they
had
even
to, they
have people
wouldn't.
that can operate them, or do they have to hire Pakistanis to do it
I
and
think they
stuff?
have to hire people to do them. Yeah, but Trump was very very warm. They obviously he and MBS had very cordial relations with each other yesterday. And then Trump delivered a kind of interesting speech in which he kind of outlined a kind of a Trumpian view of the world, which is a little different from the usual visions of American leaders. One in which he absolutely downgraded not only the whole issue of human rights, but the whole idea that somehow Americans are going to go lecturing anyone around the world on how others should live. And I think it's worth just taking a look at that. I mean, Trump is not a peacenik. He's not. He's not somebody. Oh well, he's now committed. He's some pink-haired person. Who said, oh, last thing I want is any war.
No,
That's
he's
not
not
who he is.
going to be Jimmy Carter building hospices, okay?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not. That's not who he is. On the other hand, I think he's drawing a difference between himself and from his predecessors in that whole sanctimonious attitude to the rest of the world. So if you could just take a look at what he said here. Um, um, where is this? Is this it? No, that's not it. Yeah, so this is here we have before our eyes a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. And then he says, we don't want that, and it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western intervention, noise, or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop, well, I don't know what Haval, I don't know what that is, Baghdad, or so many other cities. And then instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions, and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. So I think this is a really, he's really distancing himself from that whole.
Extraordinary.
Yeah,
It's
that's
extraordinary.
right. So we're not going to give you any lectures. And we're not saying human rights or that you have to follow democracy or do any of the things that we do. It's you basically. You've charted your own course in your own traditions, and really, those are the nation builders, the neocons. They've just brought misery to you. Um, and then he says, in the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the internationalists, it's called interventionalists. I don't know, that's his own, he invented this new word, interventionalists, were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it themselves. Peace, prosperity, and progress ultimately came not from a radical rejection of your heritage, but rather from embracing your national traditions and embracing that same heritage that you love so dearly. And it's something only you could do. You achieved the modern miracle the Arabian way. That's a good way. Um, so, again, this is miles away from Biden. Remember Biden having these democracy summits. The world is divided between democracies and autocracies and all the rest. It's just saying, no, no, no.
Again,
Yeah,
what's missing? Where's the rules-based order?
that's right. Where's exactly? There's nothing here about any rules-based order. And he says, that's okay. You're living here. You're making a lot of money. Um, it's probably not a particularly nice place. I mean, for some people, obviously, places like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, the people that Trump is hobnobbing with, the life there is pretty nice. Many people probably it isn't especially nice. Particularly the migrant workers there who really have very few rights. They're just brought in to build stuff, and then they're kicked out of the country once they built it. They don't get any citizenship or
Well,
anything else.
yeah, that's awful. But is that an American foreign policy concern?
Exactly, it's not. That's absolutely. And I think so. That's what Trump is saying. It's not on the foreign policy concern. As long as we do business with you, and we have good relations, then then that's it. Um, And I think that goes on. Today, the Gulf nations have shown the entire region a path towards safe and orderly societies with improving quality of life, flourishing economic growth, expanding personal freedoms, and increasing responsibilities on the world stage. And so, after so many decades of conflict, finally it is within our grasp to reach the future that generations before us could only dream about, a land of peace, safety, harmony, opportunity, innovation, and achievement right here in the Middle East. So let me take this opportunity to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the constructive role that you've played facilitating the Ukraine talks. And it really is, you've been amazing. You've made everything available to us. Thank you very much. Thank you. And if we get that settled, we'll pay a special tribute to what you've done.
It's kind of funny using the word tribute here
Exactly.
in that kind of cultural setting.
That's
Uh,
right.
I,
That's
I
true.
mean, this new Air Force One. I mean, is that tribute as well? Which I
Yes,
think personally is humiliating to the United States.
I think so too.
I
I mean,
think
to be honest,
absolutely
yeah,
humiliating.
I don't know. I mean, you may um, disagree. I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't. Uh,
Well, I mean, look, George, if I were Tulsi Gabbard, I would say, don't touch the plane.
yes,
I mean, for security
right,
reasons. I mean, the only way you're going to know that if that plane is safe to carry the President of the United States and the American elite, you're going to have to you're going to take it apart and put it back together again.
right.
There's
That's
no, it's a security trap. I mean,
that's
I'm
right.
not saying there's ill will there,
Right.
okay? But I mean, for goodness sake, I mean, I'm sure it looks pretty, and I saw some pictures. It's very Trumpian, okay? but I mean, it's a national security catastrophe
Right.
ready to happen.
Yeah. Exactly. And nobody seems to like the idea very much. Nobody, even on Trump's, in MAGA world, seems to like the idea very much. I mean, obviously there are those, the Israel lobby that they don't like it that it's from Qatar. But even those who are not members of the Israel lobby, they just think, well, this doesn't look good, and particularly where it's not clear that after he ceases to be president, does he still get to use this plane? And that I mean, what you get, you're getting a free gift, this wonderful plane that's going to be for your own personal use after you cease to be president. I think nobody really likes that very much. I mean, if it's a gift for the U.S. government, then the U.S. government should get to keep it. I mean, you can't really then get to use it after you cease to be president. Uh, so, so I think it's just one of those things. Trump puts it out there, but I think he's gonna back down from this.
Yeah. You want it back? You're going to have to take it. I'm not leaving this plane.
Right. It kind of reminds me. Remember when during his first term he was going to hold one of those big summits in his hotel, the hotel that he had in Washington. He still had that hotel in Washington, and he said, I can get a great deal. It's got a cut price. The discount. And there was an uproar about it that you can't hold this. I don't know, it was a G20 or whatever at his hotel, and he had to back away and said, "All right, well, but I was trying to save the government some money, but it just wasn't quite appropriate to hold it in his hotel."
Well, going back to his speech, everyone, this is truly remarkable. I mean, no president has said anything remotely like that ever,
Right,
ever.
right,
And what it signals to me, and something that George and I have been chronicling, is that this is the rules-based order is out. Now, granted, that was a term invented by Blinken, I think, or Sullivan, or collectively. That's what they called it. But I mean, the rules-based order has been around for a very long
right,
time. We just didn't call it that.
right,
Okay.
right,
Now, Trump is diverting from that in a very, very even radical way,
right,
I would say.
right. No, that's right.
We're going from the rules-based order back to what the international system is most acquainted with, great power politics, and
Well, that's
that's where we are. John Mearsheimer has won the policy debate. Um, and I want to make it very clear is that yes, the rules-based order is very detrimental because it's hypocritical, and who makes the rules, who has to obey them, what are the penalties? Yeah, George and I've been through that argument a billion times. Okay, now great power politics isn't any nicer. Everyone, it can be really quite brutal.
right,
Okay,
right.
now what have the great power paradigm? It is more natural, it's more understandable, actually more predictable. Okay. And great power politics, it has its own rule book.
Right,
Okay. Great powers understand where you stand in the pecking order.
right.
Okay. I mean, is Turkey a great power? No. Is Turkey an important power? Yes.
Yep,
Okay.
that's right. And I think that's what's so important, because ultimately, what Americans have been known for decades is these sanctimonious lectures. They go to,
USAID.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, USAID, the National Endowment for Democracy, and all the rest of this, soft power. And Trump is just simply saying, no, 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 you basically carved your own way. And in fact, we were detrimental to you, with all our lectures and all our nation buildings and regime change and everything else. We were actually hampering your progress. You did it in your own way, in your own traditions. They may not be our traditions, and so he was just basically saying, yeah, basically this is the way what works for you may not work for us. We're not trying to impose our values on you, and that is something that presidents haven't done, because all this stuff. I mean, they might say it in the abstract. Yes, of course, multipolarity. We believe in multipolarity, but they don't believe in multipolarity. When they talk about the rules-based order, is essentially an order governed by the West. The West rules it, with all its satellite states and client states throughout the world, and they subscribe to the rules set out by Washington and Brussels. And Trump is just saying, none of that is appropriate. And that's why, it's consistently, he doesn't go to Erdogan and start talking about, lecturing Erdogan about human rights in Turkey. He doesn't, we saw what happened with MBS and the Khashoggi. Says, well, it's just nothing to do with us. I mean, it's really, there's nothing. We're not going to determine our foreign policy according to what happened to Khashoggi. It's just that's not the way we're going to do things. So that's why it was such a remarkable speech, and it's one where, and that means, Trump showing is a way in which the United States can live with others and not be constantly in a state of this constant and animus, sanctions, and on the brink of going to war. Now he said, and he did bring up at one point the Abraham Accords, and he says, well, I hope Saudi Arabia will eventually join the Abraham Accords, but you will do it in your own time. I'm not going to insist on this. You'll do it in your own time.
Yes,
Yeah.
embedded in that, is that we got even though the Abraham Accords, the advent of those accords came under Trump, the Biden administration amplified them, and now Trump again. The difference between 45 and 47 is Trump is saying, ideally, we would like this. George pointed that out with a True Social when talking about Ukraine. Ideally, that's a very critical word here. We would like, we would show gratitude, we would appreciate,
Right.
but it's not a demand.
No, that's right. That's it. It's not exactly. It's not a demand. He made that clear that, we got other fish to fry. Yeah, we'd like you to do it, but it's, we're not going to condition anything on whether you join the Abraham Accords. So today, Trump met the Ahmed al-Shara, the new leader of Syria. So yesterday he announced that the United States was lifting the sanctions against Syria, and so today he met this new leader under the auspices of MBS. He was there, and MBS was the one who wanted him to meet. They were there in that room together. And I think Erdogan joined via a telephone call, so he was there. Look, I mean, Ahmed al-Shara, and I don't think he's not a good guy. I mean, I think we can agree on that. On the other hand, sanctions are, it's very hard to justify sanctions. I mean, sanctions are painful and they hurt ordinary Syrians, and they don't hurt political leaders. They
admit that now. Yeah. They admit that now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. How do we get around this one here? Well, I think I have a solution. This is not a good guy. Okay. When considering all of the dirty wars and the war on terror and all that, and then you elevate one of these guys to head of state. I mean, explain that to me. All right. Please, everyone. However, it is what it is. And giving recognition is not the same thing as legitimacy.
No.
And this is what I have done for the past 3 years. Well, actually, since the coup in February of 2014, I tend to refer to Kiev as the Kiev regime. Now, what do I mean by that? It is a regime. It is there. It has power. And they speak nominally, at least under their own laws, for themselves. Do I agree with them? Do I think they have legitimacy? No, they're the result of a coup against a democratically elected government. But are they there? Do you have to deal with them? Of course you do.
Yep.
And this is how I look at what's happening in Syria. Do I like it? Well, that's not what geopolitics is all about. What you like or dislike.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's right. He's there.
Benjamin Netanyahu. Nobody likes him.
Right.
But he's there.
Right.
And you have to contend with him.
Right. Right. No, that's right. And I think that he accepts it. He's accepted that he is the leader. He lifted the sanctions because the sanctions, I think, they were terrible. And Trump contributed to that. Trump tightened the sanctions against Syria and well, they made life miserable. Sanctions always do. They don't have any effect at all, on the leaders. The leaders can always look after themselves. It's only ordinary people who suffer under sanctions. So it's perfectly reasonable that they should be lifted. And with Ahmed al-Shara again, Trump said, "Yeah, you want to join the Abraham Accords and you want to normalize relations with Israel." So that he made that demand. Not sure that that's going to happen, but that was the demand. Now, the other thing that Trump did, and is he addressed the issue of Iran during his presentation. Now, of course, um, he knew that there's no love lost between Saudi Arabia and Iran, even though relations have improved in recent years. Um, but here you kind of see, Trumpism at work, where he makes, as we can see, he makes a lot of very, I think, very hostile, incendiary, aggressive comments about Iran. But then, he seems open to some kind of a deal with that same regime that he's been denouncing. So if you look at what he actually said here, so here we have this he talks about the terror, blah blah, and then he says the biggest and most destructive of the forces in the region is the regime in Iran, which has caused unthinkable suffering in Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, Iraq, Yemen, and beyond. So he just simply presents this, you
Well,
know,
that's boilerplate.
it's exactly it's boilerplate. I mean, this is just standard issue. This is Washington continues says that somehow what happened in Syria is the fault of Iran. Really? I mean, and he wasn't the
Really?
regime change war launched
Well,
by
there were
Obama.
plenty of people in the U.S. State Department that took credit for it.
Exactly. And then Gaza, Iran is responsible for Gaza. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Um, and then it says there could be no sharper contrast with the path you have pursued on the Arabian Peninsula than the disaster unfolding right across the in the Gulf of
Oh,
Iran.
really, really, really. Okay, madrasas all around the world.
That's right.
Okay.
That
Uh,
yeah, that's right.
Involvement potentially. I want to be careful with my words with 9/11. So, come
Yeah,
on,
yeah, yeah.
get
Exactly.
real.
That's right. That's right. Um, think of that. They wanted to name it that. I said they're not going to do that. And then he talks about while you have been constructing the world's tallest skyscrapers in Jeddah and Dubai, Tehran's 1979 landmarks are collapsing into rubble and dust. And then let me think. And you don't think your sanctions regime had anything to do with that? It's like, hey, it's like, well,
Yeah,
look,
go figure. Go figure.
that's right. Um, and Iran's decades of neglect and mismanagement have left the country plagued by rolling blackouts lasting for hours a day. All the time you hear
Again,
about it.
sanctions, sanctions, sanctions.
Exactly. Exactly. While your skill has turned dry deserts into fertile farmland, Iran's leaders have managed to turn green farmland into dry deserts as their corrupt water mafia, it's called the water mafia, causes droughts and empty riverbeds.
Okay, but see, again, going back to what I said about great power politics, is this great power politics in play? Of course it is. The United States wants to have um, uh, I'm gonna drop the word hegemony from right now because this is only one visit and a few
Right,
speeches, so let's not go across the
right,
board here.
right,
But the United States certainly wants to have great
right,
influence over these Arab
right,
families. Okay,
right,
um, and um, and of course he's playing. He can read the room, George. I mean,
right.
none of those. They're not big fans of Iran.
No, that's
Okay,
right. I mean, as I said, I mean,
now he's playing to the room.
right,
Okay. Um, to what degree he's playing to the Israeli lobby, we might talk about later because that's very wobbly at the moment, at least potentially. Um, but this is again a great power,
Right,
delineating, this is we have supremacy
right,
again, winning hegemony here. And this
right,
is a message to China, who definitely, definitely wants to get into
right,
the greater, it has,
right,
okay?
right,
And again, when you look at this region of the world, who has been one of the great competitors over the centuries? Russia
right,
also. So,
right,
some people will say, this is just pure boilerplate, and I did, because this is what we hear over and over again. But I think it's being distilled in a different way.
right. Yeah, no, I think so. And I think Trump sees that it doesn't make sense for the United States to be in permanent hostile relations with Persia. Persia is a regional power. It's been around for a long, long time. It's an ancient civilization, and it's not a great idea for the United States essentially to cede Persia to Russian influence or to Chinese influence. So so he sees
Power politics.
exactly. So he sees there has to be some way back for this. But and here we get the Israel lobby. The Israel lobby is absolutely firmly, irreconcilably determined to prevent any kind of detente between the United States and Iran. And he's seemingly, this is spread to Europe, where Europe used to at least have a moderating role here. They used to be a little more open to dialogue with Iran than the United States was. But Europe is absolutely crazily hostile to Iran, and you can look through the European press, and they get hysterical about any possibility of any kind of a deal with Iran. And then he goes, they get rich, but they don't let the people have any of it. Not unlike the the leaders of Saudi Arabia and Qatar. They get rich, but they don't share it out very much. Um, and then, of course, there's the key difference at the root of it all. While the Arab states have focused on becoming pillars of regional stability and world commerce, Iran's leaders have focused on stealing their people's wealth to fund terror and bloodshed abroad.
Okay, hold on here. Hold on just for a sec. Okay. And there's a key difference at the root of this. While the Arab states are focused on becoming pillars of regional stability and world commerce, well, the invasion of Afghanistan, the invasion of Iraq, the destruction of Syria, the
Right.
bombing of Yemen
Right.
for over a
Right.
decade,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
American machinations in
Right.
Lebanon. I mean, he said it, I think, to Bill O'Reilly. We have blood on our dirty hands or blood on our hands too.
Right.
I mean, again, this is a pitch to essentially, okay, we're not angels here, but we're a better bet. That's what this is what
Right,
Trump is
right.
saying.
That's right. But I think he's going there. He's going there as somebody who's trying to rustle up business for the United States. He comes to these Arab countries, but Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and he sees these beautiful glass buildings. Look, there's all these convention centers and the new stadium and
Who's your architect? Who's your
yeah.
architect?
Who's your architect? Exactly. I think this is fantastic. Now, if you tell him, yeah, but what about the people that they bring in, these indentured servants that they bring in to build all this, and then they kick them out afterwards? He doesn't care about that. He's just saying, hey, this is fantastic. These are people. This is regional stability. They look at all these fantastic things that they have been building. And I think that's kind of the way he's looking at it. I can work with these people. And it doesn't make any sense for these people who only care about money. Why would they want to be sponsoring terrorism? I mean, there are reasons why they do it, but for him, he says, well, they're my kind of people. I can build a Trump Tower here. I can build a golf course here, and he does. He does, builds these golf courses in the Middle East. So that's why he says. But Iran doesn't seem to be open to Trump golf courses. Um, yeah.
So far, Trump hasn't mentioned the elephant in the room.
No, no, he hasn't. Um, and yeah, he. This is the interesting thing is that he did bring up, I think, Gaza at one point in the speech, but then he kind of blamed it all on the leaders of Gaza. It's all the people leaders. Though interestingly, he didn't say the word Hamas. He just said it's all the leaders of Gaza who have led their
Because this
people.
administration just made a deal for a release
Right.
of an American.
Exactly. The most tragic of all, they have dragged down the entire region with them. Countless lives were lost in the Iranian effort to maintain a crumbling regime in Syria. Really? It didn't really do much. I mean, and he of all people should know that it was this is an Obama, Trump, Biden policy to destroy
Dirty,
that country of Syria.
the dirty war.
That's right. Look what happened to Syria. In Lebanon, the Hezbollah proxies have pillaged the hopes of a nation whose capital, Beirut, was once called the Paris of the Middle East. Um, and then so it goes on again. Um, can you imagine all of this misery and so much more was entirely avoidable? And Mohammed knew that. He knew that. Smart people knew that. If only the Iranian regime had focused on building their nation up instead of tearing the region down.
Well, okay, all right. Again, this is where the metal hits the road here. Okay, fine. George and I are so used to this conversation. It's ridiculous. George is absolutely right. He's there to make some business. Okay, he wants some contracts.
Right.
Okay, he wants to close. He wants the close deals. Okay, but but at the same time, what is Trump going to do about it? And I think basically he's
Right.
just delineating and saying, no, 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 those are them.
Right.
They
Right.
can live the way
Right.
they want. But
Right.
I can understand you people because you want
That's
to
right.
buy stuff. We
Right.
want to buy stuff. You want to sell. We want to sell. But
Right.
they don't want to, okay, which is obviously false. But
That's right.
he's making that pitch
Right.
there. No values. It's geopolitics and
Right.
stable geopolitics in
Right.
his mind means good trading relations,
That's
which
it.
makes
That,
sense.
that's it. That's exactly the way he's thinking.
What I'm saying is that this isn't a preamble to war.
No.
I think some people will interpret it that
No,
way. I could
I no,
be
you're
wrong,
absolutely right because I think, as we'll see, it's leading up to the one condition that he's demanding, which is no nuclear weapons. It's the
which
only
is
thing. So
which is doable. It's doable. It's
it's
doable.
doable. So we have this long preamble, but as he's coming to it, and here's saying, I'm willing, as I've shown previously, repeatedly, I am willing to end past conflicts and forge new partnerships for a better and more stable world, even if our differences may be very profound, which obviously they are in the case of Iran.
Should I take a bow right now?
That's right. I have never believed in having permanent enemies. I'm different than a lot of people think. And then says, I don't like permanent enemies, but sometimes you need enemies to do the job, and you have to do it right.
I'm not sure.
Enemies get you motivated. He's kind of revealing a little bit about himself.
You're going off script, Donald.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. I mean, I think we kind of always had that sense about you that's really what you're about. In
Yeah, but
fact,
that's just not Trump. That's part of the American ethos. I'm
right.
sorry.
In fact, some of the closest friends of the United States are nations we fought wars against in generations past, and now they're our friends and allies. I want to make a deal with Iran. And then, if I can make a deal with Iran, I'll be very happy if we're going to make your region and the world a safer place. But if Iran's leadership rejects this olive branch and continues to attack their neighbors, then we will have no choice but to inflict maximum pressure, drive Iranian oil exports to zero, like I
Yeah,
did before.
okay. Continues to attack their neighbors. How many countries has Israel attacked
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
region?
yeah.
How many countries has the United States gone to war with,
Right,
expending huge amounts of treasure and
right,
lives,
right,
particularly local lives?
right.
mean, wow, this is very rich.
But it's
Okay.
interesting also that during his speech, Trump really didn't say anything about Israel. He
Yeah,
again, he
there
knew
we go.
he
Well, when I said earlier the elephant in the room, I was thinking Gaza, but I'm thinking Palestine now.
right, exactly, and because he knows that's a very sore point.
Yep.
I mean, so he's talking about all this instability and the bombing and so on, and he seems, oh, it's all Iran. It's everything is kind of
Well, I
Iran's
mean, did
fault.
Iran bomb Yemen?
Yeah, exactly. Um, but that's the thing. So he's telling them, oh yeah, this all this terrible things that go on, this instability, and it's all the fault of Iran. Now, again, there's no love lost, the people in the room and Iran, but they know perfectly well what's the cause of instability. I mean, it's pretty obvious what is the cause of instability in the Middle East. It's not Iran. But he's kind of trying to keep them happy, oh well, I'm just, big as Iran, but he does not bring up the subject of
Don't
Israel.
forget, don't forget to sign those contracts on your way out of the room. Thank you.
That's
Thank
right.
you for your attention in this matter.
That's right. It says the choice is theirs to make. We really want them to be a successful country. We want them to be a wonderful, safe, great country, but they cannot have a nuclear weapon. This is an offer that will not last forever. The time is right now for them to choose right now. We don't have a lot of time to
But they
wait.
have chosen, they've chosen over and over.
Yeah, your
All
own, your own.
intelligence community tells you that.
That's right. Tulsi Gabbard that told you that. And so that's the interesting thing. So he's saying here, after all that preamble, he hasn't said, "Oh, but the condition is you have to do A, B, C. Abandon your or your missile program. Abandon all of your foreign interference and all this." He's just said they can't have a nuclear weapon. So then you say, well, okay, that's as you said, that's a deal that shouldn't be too difficult to accomplish. So
Well, also, what's really important, I mean, again, I really want to make it clear how unprecedented some of this language is. He did not mention Israel at
no,
all.
no, no,
Okay.
no.
That is a real departure.
Right,
That is a real departure. It
right,
would be ideal if you would sign the Abraham Accords,
right.
okay?
That's
Not a
right.
demand,
That's right.
okay?
That's right. And
And
you will do it in your own
basically,
time.
Iran can be Iran, it can be Persia, because that's really what it is. We don't like it, and we're different, but we just have one thing that
Right.
we have mutual agreement
That,
on. No nuclear weapons
that's
there,
right.
okay?
That's right.
That is imminently doable.
Yeah.
This is much more, considering the language, the bombastic language and obvious, I don't want to say lies, but
Right.
the perceptions that
Right.
he wants to project. He is actually everyone, what Trump just said is very moderate,
Yeah. Exactly.
very moderate.
Exactly. Exactly. So because essentially he's making clear that not that all of those other things. We're not asking them. Oh, he's got to cut off Hezbollah. He's got to abandon all of your allies in Iraq or everything else. He's just saying they can't have a nuclear weapon. But since Iran has said consistently that he doesn't want a nuclear weapon, then you think, okay, well, sounds to me like it shouldn't be that difficult to come up with a deal. I mean, if Iran said, "But we are going to have a nuclear weapon," then I think it would be different. But here you've got what's holding up the deal. Um, and I think that Trump really isn't somebody who wants to go to war. I think he really isn't. Um, I've said this before. I don't think he's not a wartime president. I think that's not how he thinks. You talk about business deals. That gets him excited. Hey, hey, I can build some real estate here. I can build a golf club here. That gets him interested. He's not somebody who's ever been interested in not just he's not a war president, but he also knows that these wars are never ending. That once you start, then that's it. It's almost impossible to extricate yourself from
It's
them. And he knows
really,
that.
it's really interesting. Um, Trump put out on Truth Social, was it before the election or after? A speech that Jeff Sachs gave in Cambridge, and it was highly critical of the current Israeli government under Netanyahu.
You're right, that's right. Yeah, I remember.
And I just I wonder if it's dawned on him, because it's dawned on a lot of other
Right,
of is that this settler colonial country is a huge problem for the
right,
United States,
right.
because you take that out of the equation and a great deal of what Trump wants to do
Absolutely,
can happen.
absolutely.
And I've said here, and I'll say it again because I think it's absolutely true. I think that the United States and Iran should have very good relations. There's no reason for them not to.
Right.
Okay. Um, all of this major exporter of terrorism, God, it's so tiresome. Okay. And it's not based in fact whatsoever. This is Hasbro. This is just Israeli talking points.
Right.
Okay. And the fact that he didn't bring up Israel, that he's not going to Israel, because I've watched everybody else talk about this, it's a sea change. Well, I don't know if maybe he just wanted to talk the way he wants to talk because he was in the region.
Right.
Okay. When he's back in Washington, okay, I don't know. Nobody can know about this. Okay. Is there something there to work with? Yeah, absolutely. That's why we're talking about it. Is it definitive? Absolutely not.
That's no, absolutely right. But if you try to sort of see the world through Trump's eyes, he says, "Well, here, I'm Saudi Arabia. I'm signing all these deals." He said, "I'm going to get $1 trillion investment from Saudi Arabia, whether it's trillion, whether it's 600 billion, whether it's 200 billion, but it's money going from there to the United
It's
States."
a win.
Yeah,
It's a
and
win.
then Israel. But hey, but Israel is a net drain on the United States. It's money leaving the United States and going to Israel. Israel does not contribute anything to the United States. And so he said, well, here, I'm building a golf club here. I'm building real estate. They're going to invest in this, and then they're going to buy all these planes and the AI and everything else. And then, but here, this is a drain, not just on our financial resources, but it's just a drain on us as a political power in the world, because it's causing problems wherever we go. It's a problem here, just with in the Middle East, where they can't get beyond that. You can't get Saudi Arabia to join you in this the Abraham Accords, because they cannot go beyond that. They can't get beyond the fact of what's going on in Palestine.
Well, these countries that are um, uh, refusing to go down that path, they could be easily overthrown. Okay, it's existential.
Right.
It's existential. I mean, I've known many Arabist scholars, and they've always kind of you know made it kind of clear that the Arab street, well, it probably doesn't exist, okay? But there are streets in these countries
Right.
that do not want to see normalization with Israel, particularly in light of the genocide. So, um, and Trump seems to intuitively understand that. Okay, as far as a security a pact, which will never pass the U.S. Senate,
No,
everybody,
no,
it will never
no,
pass. Okay,
no, no.
because that is, I mean, talk about dangerous entanglements. Oh my God. I mean, even Zionists will say, well, this is a huge leap for American security, particularly when the president has other objectives, like the Western Hemisphere, the American border, and of course, the coming conflict with China. And you're going to have us anchored into the Persian Gulf forever?
No, but first of all, they also this powerful Israel lobby absolutely does not trust Saudi Arabia. It doesn't trust any Arab state. They don't want
No.
America entangled with any Arab state, because they think that as soon as you're entangled with an Arab state, they're going to be whispering in your ear, hey, there's a deal to be made. Just for God's sake, deal with this Israel issue. So they always want as bad a relations as possible between the United States and the Arab world. That's why even if Saudi Arabia said, okay, right, we'll join the Abraham Accords. Yeah, we recognize the state of Israel. Now, can we have our security pact, please? Uh,
Or and hey, they're coming out with this F-47 jet. We want some of those too.
right.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
even then. It will not pass. They will not vote for it. They will not vote for a security pact with Saudi Arabia. It cannot happen. That's because the Senate will always reject it because they think, hey, we can't trust Saudi Arabia because they're Arabs.
They're Arabs. That's right.
Exactly,
Exactly.
they're Arabs, and they're our natural enemies. So therefore, there's no incentive really for the Saudis to make what would be a huge shift in policy by recognizing Israel. And let's leave aside the question of Gaza. Let's leave aside even if that Gaza issue were resolved. For the Saudis to come along and say we now recognize Israel, they're not going to get the security pact. It'll never pass Congress.
This trip that Trump has made is absolutely fascinating because it potentially could be the beginning of something.
Yeah.
For me, the jury is out. Number one, because it's Trump. Okay. Number two, his primary goals are deals, not security yet. That we're not there
No,
yet.
no. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he thinks one's going to lead to the other. Maybe
But
that's another.
you can have some kind of bilateral arrangements, which obviously there are between the United States and Saudi Arabia. I just don't think there's going to be a formal security pact. I mean, something written down as a treaty. There will not be a security treaty. That I think won't pass Congress. But there's obviously some arrangements that take place between the
Well,
United States and Saudi Arabia.
I'm not convinced the Saudis really want to go there either
I
now
don't think so.
because
Yeah.
no, because the Saudis, as much as Trump rhetorically demonized Iran, Saudi-Iranian relations have warmed.
Right.
Okay, I mean, you still have to wear a heavy coat. Okay, it's that warm.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
and China is whispering sweet nothings into these countries as well,
Right.
and Trump knows that money doesn't talk; it screams.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
and so the
Right.
Chinese are very interested as well. So it's interesting that Trump is making a pitch, but a different pitch that we've never seen before. No rules-based
Right. No,
order,
that exactly.
democracy versus autocracy. He's done with that.
Yeah,
Thank goodness.
that's
But
it. That's
as
it.
I said earlier, geopolitics, as much as I want to get rid of this ridiculous ideologically driven neo-colonial mindset that and the West is supposed to be postmodern, but postmodernism has gone to neo-colonial policies. But great power politics it has its own problems. Okay, and
Nice.
so what we saw Trump make a pitch. It's his road show.
No,
It's
I
a
think
road.
I think that's right. I think it's absolutely says we're not talking about values. When you have all those the clown show at NATO, when we talk about our values, these are that Trump absolutely there's no more talk about values, no more talk about human rights, no more talk about the rules-based order. No more talk about democracy. No more talk about a common shared system of values. All of that is gone. It's just saying, hey, you've got your own system of government. You know for yourselves what's the best path forward for you, and we accept that. And we're not in the business of nation building or whatever fighting wars on anyone else's behalf. So all of that I think is um, very positive. But I think the fly in the ointment is still what are you going to do about the state of Israel? And Trump is just the one figure who has the kind of audacity to see beyond it and say this state really isn't doing us any good. It's not strengthening us. There are all these deals to be made here. There's money to be had,
And
and
also
all that is being hampered by this state.
Marjorie Taylor Greene,
Right.
George,
Right.
because not only is it the fly in the ointment in that region of the world, it's a fly in the ointment of his own base,
Right.
okay?
Yep.
Because I just don't see it, okay? Now, because of the disaster known as the Democrats and the liberals, they're going to give the boss a wide berth.
Right.
But there are limits to that as well. America first means America
Yep.
first.
That's right.
Okay. And the rumblings within the movement, it doesn't bode well with him. I mean, what are you going to do about this? Okay. What are you going to do about this?
Right.
Because you have obviously um, higher echelons of the people claim to be MAGA are not, at
Right.
least in my assessment. So
Right.
he has to deal with the domestic front as well.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. I think that's true. But throughout, on this foreign policy is, he really has very serious domestic issues, whether it's Ukraine that we talked about earlier. That there's a very powerful domestic constituency would be opposed to what he's trying to do in Ukraine. And here, when you go to the Middle East, they are not at all happy. They are not happy when they see him, in this, very friendly embrace with these Arab leaders. They simply don't like it, and particularly as he's not going to make a stopover in Israel just to wash off all
To
this,
reassure them.
yes, all that Arab warmth and kisses and everything else. He's not going to do it. So all the Ben Shapiros are extremely unhappy about
Did
that.
you see it? Did you see it?
But
Ben,
did I?
Ben, Ben Shapiro is just furious that the Israeli American is going to Qatar. It's just absolutely furious. Well, Ben, why did the Qatar fund Hamas
Right,
through Netanyahu?
right, right,
Okay.
right.
I mean, everybody go watch it. It is, from what I can tell, the Daily Wire is facing bankruptcy. Why? Because of the MAGA movement.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And I've said this to George, this was way before all this stuff was happening. I remember telling George, yeah, I'll watch Ben Shapiro. I mean, he's a smart guy. When he talks about abortion or gun control or immigration, he's a very smooth conservative. But I've told you personally, when it gets on Israel, I just don't even, because that's his thing. It's his thing. It's
But
just fanaticism. It's a
that's
fanaticism.
but you always wonder I think with somebody like him that's really what he cares about most.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, obviously, watch his videos.
that's right. Well, oh yeah, he'll go along with abortion and all these other conservative causes. That's it, just in a way to establish himself among the conservatives. It's the same thing with Mark Levin. Oh yeah, well,
Oh, he made a complete
Supreme
clown out of
Court,
himself.
all the usual kind of conservative talking points. Yeah, you'll embrace that. But ultimately, what does he really care about? What's the most important thing for him? It's always Israel, and that's the tell. What do you really care about? It's Israel. Alan Dershowitz is another one. It always comes back to Israel. And it's funny. What was it with these people like Ben Shapiro? I think it was the question when he was very unhappy about Trump really, saying the Houthis, okay, well, I think we're going to stop that. Let Israel deal with this problem. And so, okay, fine. Well, Israel will deal with the problem. We don't need no stinking America to do the
Yeah,
thing
but
for
the
us.
Americans haven't intervened, Ben.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
have been doing what you
that's right.
want.
Exactly. But the whole idea that Israel would sort of launch any kind of an attack on Iran without the United States is that's just a fantasy. Israel knows perfectly well it can't do it by itself. It needs the United States in its corner. So will it be, Ben Shapiro? Oh, we don't need America. We're just going to go ahead and bomb Iran. Yeah, right. Yeah,
Because the events of what happened on October 7th, people like Ben Shapiro and Bari Weiss, they say that's an American tragedy.
yeah, exactly.
It's not. It's not.
No,
What they did to us. No, what
right.
they did to you.
That's
But
right.
I mean, not to me.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
It, 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 it and so, you know, tr I'm going to give credit to Trump for what he did. Okay. I mean, George and I, it's our vocation to nitpick.
Right.
We're nitpickers. Okay. And we went through some of what he had to say. But in toto, on the whole,
Yeah.
he's moving into a
He's moving. He's moving in.
politics, geopolitical
That's right.
mindset.
He's moving. He's moving in the right direction. I mean, these things take time. It's not something you can just do overnight. Because if you do it overnight, then it's not going to last. So it's a process, and I think this was very positive. He was definitely moving away from all the previous presidents, all the sort of the speeches of George W. Bush. Remember all that speechifying, Obama and Biden and everyone else. This is very, very different from saying essentially we're not going to give you any more lectures. Just that's it. That's it. No more lectures. And that's consistent with everything else he's done, like with USAID and all these things. Basically, we're not going to spread all this propaganda. You know what's best for you. We respect that. So long, you respect us, we can work together.
George, what is your thinking here? Um, there are a variety of reasons that appear to have motivated Donald Trump and what he's done in the last couple of days. How much is it about legacy and his place? How much do you think that plays into it? He's not going to run for he can't run for president again. I mean, everything he does is legacy
Right.
by definition.
No,
Is that a big role?
I
That a
think
big role in this?
I think it's legacy, and I think he probably feels a kind of bitterness about what happened during his first term, and therefore he sort of thinks that, well, there was a policy making elite that essentially bundled me out of office. They basically bundled me out of office in 2020, and I think he feels that now there has to be a reckoning. I mean, I think it's taking a much more radical um, goal than he did in 20. He was running a fairly conventional foreign policy during his first term, and I think we were very disappointed that somehow he made all these promises during his campaign, and then he just settled down for essentially, on most things, a traditional foreign policy. But I think what happened when instead of that policy making elite saying thank you to him, they just bundled him out of office. And so now I think he's now determined to change course, and that's why I think both domestically and internationally he's pursuing a quite radical, ambitious agenda.
That's right. Move fast and break things. That's
Exactly. That's right.
what he's
Exactly.
doing. But that's the outline of all of it. But then it gets down to the minutia. Did a previous video. What's going to happen in Istanbul during the Russian-Ukrainian negotiations? That appears to have a lot of other people there, and the same thing with what's going on with Iran. I mean, his administration is speaking at cross purposes all of the time. Is he going
Right.
to start shutting that down? What are the political consequences that he'll have to pay? He's
Yep.
obviously had to think about that. Every single American president thinks about that when it comes to the lobby.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
What is his calculus? We don't know yet.
We
Okay.
don't know yet.
He's
But
going
he's
to be
he
very bold. I mean, for those, young ones out there, what Trump has been saying the last few days was
yeah,
unthinkable a few
that's
months
right.
ago.
That's right.
Unthinkable.
That's right. That's right. And but he's setting the agenda. This wasn't like in the first term when he had Rex Tillerson doing his thing and then Pompeo doing his thing.
John Bolton.
Yeah, John Bolton. I mean, here he's setting the agenda now. Where this is all going to end up, that we don't know. But Rubio knows perfectly well he has to speak Trump speak. Pete Hegseth knows he has to speak Trump speak. There's no more of this. People saying, okay, well, I think I'm going to take over the foreign policy. There's no room for Fiona Hill types saying, well, I think I'm going to take over the policy towards Russia. So he's basically he's the one who is setting the agenda. He's not going to allow that kind of
And
freewheeling policy making.
he doesn't seem to be in a hurry to replace or to appoint a new National Security Council advisor. He seems to be in no rush.
Right, that's right. Did you see what he said when somebody suggested, are you going to appoint Stephen Miller as your national security advisor? He says, well, that would be a step down for him. He's doing important things for me here.
Well, that's a reveal. That is such a reveal because George and I have talked about this.
No,
I think that Stephen Miller is the policy
right,
power behind the
right.
throne.
I think so too.
And he was on that signal conversation,
Right. He
bombing
was
Yemen, and Miller was on
right,
in
right.
that.
Yeah,
That's a big tell as
right.
well.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And I may be wrong about this, but I don't think he said anything. He was just
I,
on
I,
it.
I don't think so. I think he was there as I think he was there to represent the president's interests. So he was just making sure that that the members of this chat weren't undermining the president. But I think that's I said, it's a step down for him. What he's doing is far more important.
I think Steve Miller's turning into Trump's Beria.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think yeah, I think it's a very interesting. I mean, like you have Stephen Miller, then you have Steve Witkoff. They're the people who matter. So Rubio, well, he's Secretary of State and his National Security Advisor, kind of like Henry Kissinger. No, I mean,
No,
no, absolutely no.
that is so laughable. It's so laughable. Marco, you're no Henry Kissinger,
Exactly.
okay?
Exactly. So, so, oh, well, yeah, you can be national security. Does that mean I'm Henry Kissinger? No, it doesn't mean that you're Henry Kissinger. Just do your thing, show up on these TV shows
What it tells me, again, it's so early. Trump doesn't need a national security advisor. I think that's what he
I
thinks.
think so too. Yeah, exactly.
Why? Why is this guy in the office every morning? Sucking up the coffee.
That's right.
Okay. All right, everyone. Truly historic visit. I think George and I expected it. Um, I wasn't really disappointed in anything. Again, it was kind of in Trumpian language, which is, not always very refined.
Right.
And maybe that's to his advantage because there's an element of ambiguity.
Right.
You know, never over underestimate or underestimate this guy. I think that's the what after the first 4 months. I think that's what we should our default position should be.
I think so too. No, exactly. Yeah.
All right, everybody. This is the second of two we did here on Wednesday. George and I will have a whole lot to talk about on Friday,
Friday.
most
Absolutely.
likely. Okay,
Exactly.
so
Absolutely.
spread the word. Okay,
Exactly.
spread the word. All right, this is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Like I said, today is Wednesday. George will go solo. We return on Friday, and Buddy is speaking. He's speaking in Chihuahua.
Yes.
I'm going to translate here. Just a second. Okay. Don't forget about the tip jar.
Exactly. They're very, they're very blunt. They say, no ands, ifs, and buts.
I can't really actually say what he said here.
Exactly. It's brisk. It's a very brisk, concise language. So yeah, whatever you've got into the tip jar. That's basically it. And it has to be a constant thing. It's not just a one-off. It has to be constant filling up of the tip jar. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And we're going to get these dogs to be a little gentler in their language. They're going to be because they're getting a little let's say flowery in their use of words. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.